My name is Joe Ricotta, and today I'll be talking about my review paper called Stability of Action and Kinesthetic Perception in Parkinson's Disease. Stability is a feature we explore with everyday motions, including simple actions such as grabbing a cup, playing guitar, and tying our shoes. Particularly with tying our shoes, we're dealing with a system with infinite degrees of freedom and a shoestring, so stability is a crucial element of completing that task successfully. All of these tasks are difficult for folks with Parkinson's disease, which happens to be the fastest growing neurodegenerative disease in the world, with over 1 million Americans with the condition in 2020. Degeneration in the substantia nigra of structure in the midbrain causes cardinal motor symptoms of rigidity, bradykinesia, tremor, and postural instability in Parkinson's disease. And because the motor symptoms only emerge after 50% of the neurons in the striatum degenerate, early diagnosis remains an enigma for Parkinson's. There's a strong need for sensitive diagnostics early in the disease process. Metrics of movement stability may fill this missing role, as previous research has shown that PD affects metrics of movement stability and movement agility. Within the physical approach to motor control, this loss of stability in action anticipates a loss of stability in kinesthetic perception, which is the sense of body position and sense of effort. We should define our terms here. What is meant by stability of action and stability of perception? Well, stable systems entail the use of synergies. A system is said to have a synergy when its elements coordinate with one another to keep a performance variable unchanged or stable. So what are the elements of action and perception, and how does Parkinson's disease affect them? Before we talk about how Parkinson's disease changes the stability of action, we need a normative account of action. The motor cortex encodes a lambda, which is the threshold of the tonic stretch reflex, and relays that to the muscle. Here's lambda. On the x-axis we have position, and on the y-axis we have force. Lambda is the threshold of the tonic stretch reflex. Below lambda, there is no force. Above lambda, there is muscle force produced. The actual position the limb takes is dependent upon the external load. Here, if we select lambda 2, load A would mean that we obtain equilibrium point 2A. Likewise, if we had a higher load, we come to rest at equilibrium point 2B. And the other lambdas show their respective equilibrium points if those lambdas had been chosen with this load. So each equilibrium point that we see on the graph here is associated with its own unique set of afferent signals to the central nervous system, making it then possible for the central nervous system, given the afferent and efferent components of movement, to dictate where the endpoint is in space. So perception is a function of motor and sensory processes. Control via these mechanisms allows us to analyze synergies in finger force space. Imagine I ask you to produce forces with 2 fingers of your hand, and those 2 forces sum up to 10 newtons. And I ask you to do this over a period of time, and then to do that multiple times. In this space, the space of finger forces, there exists a manifold, the uncontrolled manifold, here, which describes the task being performed perfectly. Across trials, performance can be decomposed into variability along the uncontrolled manifold and variability orthogonal to the uncontrolled manifold. These metrics can then be used to calculate the synergy index, which is essentially a metric of how much variability is accounted for in the UCM versus how much is accounted for in the orthogonal space. Previous work has shown that Parkinson's disease elicits decreased synergy indices in steady-state finger force production tasks. These are accompanied with similar changes at the whole body level when asked to stand in static stance. The synergy metrics may serve as a clinically meaningful metric in Parkinson's disease. But what about perception? Parkinson's disease elicits altered sense of endpoint position. It affects the beneficial response to active muscle contraction and kinesthetic tasks. Further, it is harder for patients with Parkinson's disease to detect motion of their limbs, and they have a blunted response to muscle vibration, while also affecting patients' sense of lower extremity force production. Putting it all together now. The accuracy of the perception of coordinate x, estimated as the standard deviation of x over successive trials, is defined by the variability of the central component, standard deviation of the reference coordinate, equivalent to lambda, and of the afferent contribution, standard deviation of the afferents. The perceived coordinate is equivalent to a referent coordinate plus the function of afferent information, and is estimated about a point with coordinates x and f in this range. Parkinson's disease is expected to lead to standard deviations in referent coordinate much greater than standard deviations in afferent components, thus leading to similar effects under small and large standard deviation of afferent components. In conclusion, there is a host of evidence that shows that PD elicits changes in one's sense of body position and force production, or a sense of kinesthesia. Parkinson's disease is a sensory motor disorder, not just a motor disorder. Metrics of task relative stability do capture changes in the loss of stability of action in PD, perhaps early in the disease process. Early changes in kinesthetic function may be detectable with tests requiring kinesthetic invariance in PD, serving as a potential answer to the lack of a sensitive test early in the disease process. Here are my citations. Thanks.